Hoshiai no Sora was one of the standouts for me in 2019 because of its setting and subject matter. I'm a big fan of modern sports anime, and I give pretty much every show with the sports genre attached to it a chance, but what really drew me in was the main theme of the series: how a parent's actions can deeply impact their children. Hoshiai no Sora touches on more benign subjects like Mitsue's mom disapproving of her desire to become an artist, and goes all the way up to see how these kids deal with physically abusive parents. I already started working on a project about why I love it so much when the trailer for the movie dropped, and now that's just added more fuel to the fire that the show has lit within me. Even in its current state, Hoshiai no Sora is, if nothing else, a series with excellent character writing. I mean this not only in how the characters show progression over the course of the season, but also the way that minor details in earlier episodes become foreshadowing to later events in the story, and these details are carrying over into the movie. The very first instance of this comes from Now in episode 1. One of his first lines in the series is him talking about Itsuki's older sister, claiming that he's jealous that she's someone who's smart, attractive, and good at tennis. But the moment Itsuki has a negative reaction to his comment, Now recoils and insists that he's just joking. Not even a minute later, he's telling a story to the rest of the team about how he heard the girls' tennis coach begging their advisor for a practice match. Shingo looks to the others for confirmation, and Taiyo tells him that Nao's just making stuff up again. In early episodes of Hoshiai no Sora, moments like this happen regularly. In episode 2, Nao talks about his mother being cousins with a celebrity in order to impress Maki when they first meet. And again, he's called out for telling a fairy tale. This establishes a pattern for the viewer to pick up on, so that we know this is a character trait of Nao's. But that's all it is at that point. A trait that he has which distinguishes him from the rest of the cast. Nao's little fibs and unbelievable stories are scattered throughout the early episodes of Hoshiai no Sora until episode 8, when the reason for this behavior is finally established. In the Japanese dub, Nao's mother is referred to as a monster parent, a type of parent that is typically overprotective of and authoritarian towards their children. One common behavior among monster parents is making excessive requests and/or complaints towards their child's teachers or school, which she does at the end of episode 7. She files a complaint claiming that Nao is being forced to participate in club activities on a Sunday, when the truth is that the team was holding a barbecue as a way to help the kids relax and have some fun. As a result of this complaint, club activities are suspended for a week, despite the fact that a tournament is rapidly approaching. Nao's mom believes that his time is better spent on studying than taking part in a club that she sees as worthless to his future. Because soft tennis is a sport with a very small professional scene, and the club was doing poorly before Maki arrived, she wants him to instead dedicate himself to improving his grades and preparing for high school entrance exams. In her mind, forcing club activities to cease and enrolling Nao in a cram school is what's best for him. But ultimately, she's damaging him far more than she realizes, because all she sees in him is what she wants to see. You can see Nao using his left hand to play tennis starting in episode 2, and his left-handedness is recognized by the team that he and Taiyo play against in episode 6. At this point in the series, I didn't think much about it, beyond thinking that the show might have an episode focusing on how being left-handed can benefit the player, like Haikyuu did when we finally got to see Ushijima in action in the battle against Shiratorizawa. But instead of doing this, Hoshiai no Sora made Nao's left-handedness something harder to forget in episode 9, when his mom notices him using it to eat and barks at him to use his right hand. It's one of the many things about him that she doesn't accept, and criticizes regularly. It's stated in the same episode that Nao's mom rejects his entire personality. She asks him why he can't just do as he's told, tells him to stop doing things that she doesn't agree with. All of this rejection coming from her, and not a word from his distant father, eventually leads Nao to a breaking point. In episode 9, Nao puts Shingo's little sister at risk, hoping that her being missing would cancel club activities for the day and possibly make going home a little bit easier. When asked if he's seen her, he lies until Maki catches the jingle of the keys to the room she's locked in coming from Nao's pocket. Nao tells these lies because he's learned that when he tells his mother the truth, he gets yelled at and degraded by her. So instead, he tells her what she wants to hear in order to make things easier on himself. He's reached a point where being saying what they want to hear, or saying anything that'll get a positive reaction out of someone who hears him. In trying to do what's best for him, she's turned her son into a pathological liar. We briefly get to see the impact that this has had on him in the movie trailer. 2 years after suffering a mental break from his mother's abuse, Nao seems to have become a delinquent. The boys that he's with fit the image of this character archetype, given their disheveled uniforms and this one guy wearing his face mask the way a lot of anime bad boys do. It's possible that Nao's even their leader, since he's placed in front of the group rather than beside them. And this move makes sense for Nao. In order to escape the hold that his mother had on him, Nao's decided to become everything she doesn't want him to be, doing the exact opposite of her desire as a giant middle finger to her. But he seems to yearn for the days when he was on the tennis court with his friends, because those were the only times when he was truly happy. This is what Hoshiai no Sora is best at, leaves small details for the viewer to pick up on and rewards you for your observation by making these things more significant as the story progresses. This is used especially well in the way that Toma's home situation is portrayed. The first time we see Toma at home draws direct contrast to seeing Maki and his mom's morning routine, where Maki's scene is played to upbeat music. Toma's morning is silent. The only sound is his fork scraping his plate as he sits at a large table by himself. Where Maki's day is filled with energy, running back and forth to make sure everyone has what they need to start the day, Toma's is stagnant until older brother Ryoma comes in. This is done to showcase a difference between the two of them, and the cause for this is drip-fed to the audience starting in episode 1. Ryoma's alone in the house with his and Toma's mother when he tells her that he'll be spending the day with a friend and won't be home for dinner. She immediately becomes nervous because this means that she'll be alone with Toma. She makes it clear to Ryoma that she favors him over Toma, and she does so with fear in her voice. The scene abruptly ends as she tries to explain how Toma makes her feel, and the audience knows that something isn't right by the end of the scene. In episode 3, when Toma ditches practice to come home early, his mom's upset with him. She says,
"What is the matter with you? Are you ever going to try?"
To which Toma responds,
"I am trying so hard."
At this point in the series, Ryoma serves as a filter between the two of them. In his own talk with him, Toma says that he thinks the tennis club is bad because of him, because he's worthless as a captain. Ryoma tries to reassure him, but Toma claims that their mom says it to him too. And again, Ryoma tries to make him feel better. He says, "Parents and their children aren't always going to get along, so it's not your fault. You're just not compatible with mom." Ryoma tries to pacify both sides of the problem, and at first his outlook on the situation seems to fit. It feels like the two of them just don't see eye to eye. But over time, we see this isn't the case. Toma shows that he has a lack of self-worth in episode 7, when he confesses to Yu that he doesn't know how to interact with others in a large group. He ends the conversation by saying that maybe he's twisted, which visibly concerns Yu. It feels like a comment that's been thrown at him in the past, and one that he seems to accept. In episode 10, we get more pieces to the puzzle. During another argument with his mom, Toma digs at every point he can to upset her. He says that her cooking is awful, which is why no one eats at home, including his father. They yell at one another, and she tells him that she never wanted to be his mother, and that Ryoma should have stayed out of it. It's clear now that she didn't want to have Toma, and that somehow Ryoma affected the decision to ultimately keep him. This is information that a child should never have to know. Being told that he wasn't wanted, that he's not as good as his brother by a parental figure, is enough to destroy how that child sees themselves. It explains Toma's low self-worth, but the blows just keep coming. In episode 12, Toma's mom drops a bombshell on him over the phone. He calls Ryoma to tell him that they won their first game, but she answers instead. She tells him that she's divorcing her husband, taking Ryoma, and leaving Toma behind, because she hates having to deal with what torments her more than anything: him. While this aspect of Toma's story was built up very well, it also brings to light another aspect of Hoshiai no Sora's makeup as a series. At the end of the day, it's a slice-of-life drama with a heavy emphasis on the drama, and there are absolutely scenes and choices that feel over the top or unrealistic. I mean, I'm not sure how many parents would tell their kid directly that they hate them, no matter how true it is. But to me, there's enough moments that are so grounded in reality that I can forgive the times where it's too much. The parts that hit me the hardest were the portrayals of Yu's experiences as a young member of the LGBT community. Yu has been recognized as queer for more of the anime than just episode 8, when their gender identity was revealed. The topic of Yu's sexuality is brought up in episode 2, and that's when I latched onto them, because I saw pieces of my younger self in them. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one. During the scene at the beginning of episode 2, where Toma finds Yu cornered by 3 other boys in the stairwell, I felt a familiar pain in my heart. Toma watches as Yu's pushed and knocked to the ground while the bullies throw insults at them. One of them puts his foot on Yu's shoulder and says that they need to be careful in case being gay is contagious. Then Toma intervenes, scares the bullies away, and I wished that I'd had a friend like Toma when I was their age. In episode 5, 2 members of the track team crash the locker room that the soft tennis club occupies to goad them. One removes his tank top almost immediately, trying to use his more prominent muscles to make the point that the soft tennis team isn't good enough to win even one match. While this is happening, Yu glances over their shoulder and turns away the second they see the guy flexing. The look on their face after they turn away brought me back to high school, before I was even aware of my sexuality. One day I was changing in the locker rooms before gym class, and I spaced out. I wound up staring at a girl down the aisle from me, right at her butt. She noticed what I was doing before I did and gave me a disgusted look. Looking back on this moment, I feel like she was right to respond that way. I know I would react the same way to any unwanted stares. But in that moment, I was horrified, and I suddenly understood why my friend, who was aware of her sexuality, chose to change in a bathroom stall instead of the locker room with everyone else. Yu has fears and realities that come along with being a member of the LGBT community that just about anyone else like them can relate to. The harassment, the fear that a subtle action could give you away or make the bullying worse. Denying your own feelings when others ask because you don't know if they'll be accepting of you. Yu has both moments of rejection and moments of acceptance in their story. Maki accepts Yu's romantic interest in Toma without a second thought, and he has a meaningful conversation with them when Yu expresses confusion about their gender identity. The rest of the team stands up for Yu when they can't defend themselves. In the soft tennis club, Yu has found a group of allies who accept them for who they are. These are things that every queer person wants, but sadly it's not guaranteed. And even if we don't experience a life of hardship because of who we are, most of us still have that fear, which is why the end of episode 8 hits me so hard. After a day out with friends who accept them, and dressing up in an outfit that doesn't match their assigned gender, Yu goes home to return the clothes that they borrowed from their sisters, but finds neither of them. Instead, Yu's mother finds them with the bag full of clothes and reacts the way every LGBT person is afraid of. She tells Yu that they're a boy, that they can't be a girl because she already has 2 daughters. Then she yells that she did everything right and that she didn't raise them this way. Whether you're watching it subbed or dubbed, her reaction is a hard rejection that cuts you to the core, and I hope that more of their story is told in the movie. Hoshiai no Sora is great for these reasons and more, but that doesn't stop me from wanting to see where the story goes. Before the trailer came out, I was content looking at it as a window into a specific amount of time with the soft tennis club. It showcases the strong bonds of friendship that sports anime love to address, and that no matter what's going on at home, having these bonds can make life a little bit easier to endure. But there are other bigger hints of foreshadowing dropped in Hoshiai no Sora that haven't been fully fleshed out yet due to its current runtime. The most obvious character to express this is Toma, whose story still has so much more left to uncover. From episode 1, I could tell that Toma had problems handling his emotions, but at the time I thought, what teenager doesn't? I know I got angry for no reason when I was his age. It wasn't until episode 2 that I sensed there was more to Toma than just being an emotional teenage boy. When he comes to Yu's rescue from the bullies, these kids who are so confident picking on Yu notice Toma coming, and all but one of them stops. Both of the other boys encourage their friend to back off, like they're afraid of what's going to happen now that Toma's there. This is only confirmed when one of them says that Toma is a total psycho. You don't just get a reputation as a school psycho for no reason. Something had to have happened in Toma's past that certain kids know about and others don't, which warrants him being called this. Ever since this moment, I've been concerned every time I've seen Toma get angry, because I know something's lingering just below the surface, waiting for the right time to explode. And maybe it will in due time, or it already has, depending on the story behind the scar on his left arm. And let's not forget the massive cliffhanger that the series ended off on. In the last scene of the show, Maki goes home from the tournament and walks right into the after effects of chaos. He calls for his mom and there's no answer. There's a broken glass of water on the floor. Sho is sitting in the living area, looking distraught. His mom is nowhere in sight, and something in Maki breaks. He leaves the apartment and goes out to buy a giant kitchen knife. He walks through the city under a dark, overcast sky that looks like it'll unleash a torrent of rain at any minute. He stands outside the door to his father's shitty apartment and takes the knife from his backpack. He says,
As long as he's still alive, we're trapped, and we'll never be free. I'm ending this right now.
And the last shot of the series is Maki standing in front of that door, wielding the knife. I had so many questions as I rewatched the series again and again, looking for anything that could have been left behind in preparation for this twist. And I found one moment that I think has sat with Maki since it happened. In episode 5, after confiding in Toma about the situation with his dad, Maki waits with him at home for his abuser to come back looking for money. Toma's there to prevent any further abuse, and to help Maki stand up to him. Toma is very protective of the people that he cares about, and his desire to protect Maki merges with his anger in this moment. After Maki's dad drawls on about how Maki can never hide from him because it's a father's right to see his son, Toma says,
If you don't stop tormenting my friend, I swear, I'll kill you! I would get away with it too. They always go easy on minors, right?
Maki was right behind Toma when he said this. He heard every word of Toma's threat, and I believe these words stuck with him. He kept them in the back of his mind, probably even forgot about them, but then the scene in episode 12 happened, and I think he decided to take those words and run with them. This movie must take place after he served his time for the murder, but now he's going to face more repercussions for what he's done. Thanks to Tumblr user Bad Translations, I got an idea of what's being said once Maki makes his appearance in the trailer. He says that someone should be left alone because they don't want to see him anymore, and then it cuts to Toma. He's struggling to find a partner in his new team. He leaves practice and notices Maki watching him from down the road. His expression changes to one of malice, and the two stare each other down as the trailer ends. Toma must be mad at Maki for what happened 2 years ago. From Toma's perspective, Maki left at the time when he needed a friend the most. He was already abandoned by his mother, and then his closest friend was ripped from his life. Maki was the glue that kept the team from disbanding, and I bet without him it deteriorated back to its former state or ceased to exist. Some of the kids were fine with this and moved on to find new groups of friends, but without the support system he'd found in the team, now fell through the cracks. And now we get to see the aftermath of this one moment that's changed everyone's lives forever.